Marvel Rivals is having an incredibly successful launch with already accumulating over 20 million players, while everyone is still finding their main characters to play as players are realizing that some are better than others, especially in ranked and competitive games. Here's how the meta of the characters will change over the course of the different seasons that come with Marvel Rivals. With any standard online multiplayer game that introduces a wide range of different characters, balancing is inevitable. Let me explain this and how it all ties in with the forever changing meta of Marvel Rivals. Although developers can set character stats and experiment as much as they want behind the scenes, players will always find something game-breaking or lacking in a character that questions their competitive prowess. And this is never on the developers as long as they respond to observations made by the community. If you've been playing the game, you know that the top duelists in the game that are used currently by everyone are Hawkeye, Iron Fist, Winter Soldier, and Hela. As tricky as some of them are to grasp, it is exceptionally rewarding when used correctly as it leads to MVP of the match most of the time. Other characters on the current meta list include Scarlet Witch, Magneto, Doctor Strange, and Jeff the Landshark. Gosh, he still haunts my dreams. Luckily for those that are getting tilted by facing a strong opponent that runs one of these characters, I almost guarantee that the developers at NetEase Games are closely watching each of these characters and already testing balance changes for the next season. With these characters getting a nerf, it is also inevitable that other characters will be getting a buff. Who would I have on my short list? Wolverine and Black Widow. Both of these characters were surprisingly disappointing with the amount of damage they could dish out given their abilities. The fact that Wolverine's time to KO is very high and only mastered by the best players in the game, and the headshot critical hit from Black Widow's sniper can't one-shot opponents is something that will definitely be looked at. I would almost bet that Black Widow and Wolverine will be getting a buff in the first round of balancing changes. So back to the original point in the video, how does this get involved with the forever meta of Marvel Rivals? Current team compositions require at least one Vanguard or tank, 2 duelists, and 1 healer, with the other 2 spots being filled to fit a team's playstyle. For the duelists, this starts as the Hawkeyes and the Helas for now before they get nerfed. Then this becomes the Wolverines and the Black Widows, characters that will get buffed. Do you know what comes after? Another cycle of Hawkeyes and Helas, characters that were nerfed but then have to get buffed to find that perfect balance. It's an infinite loop of the same characters and those of similar mechanics to always find their way back to the meta, while it is also a goal of a game developer to strike that perfect balance where every character is equally viable. It's super unlikely, especially when your game has hundreds of potential characters given the vastness of the Marvel universe. All the characters I mentioned so far in this video are simply those that came out at launch. There have already been rumors about the next batch of characters that are coming, and I guarantee those will add even more competitively viable team compositions to the game. And you might think this makes it harder to predict the future metas of the game. Actually, it doesn't. Notice that every character in the game either heavily relies on a range attack or melee attack, but not both. This will be the standard going forward for characters coming in, meaning that we can always expect how a character can fit into team comps based on their ranged or melee attacks. For example, a character like Human Torch will most likely rely on range attacks, while a character like Shang-Chi will rely more on hand-to-hand close combat fights. After all this talk about the meta, what is the current meta and how can we simplify it to fit to any character in the game? This is the main one I've observed that I did mention in this earlier in this video, but I'll go through it with a little more detail. There are 4 guaranteed roles that need to be filled on a team. 1 tank, 2 damage dealers, 1 healer. Starting with your 2 damage dealers, one of them should always be able to do damage from range like a Hawkeye, a Punisher, or a Hela. The other DPS should be one that can fight up close with your tank, Iron Fist, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Magic, those kinds. In my opinion, these should always be the first 2 characters that are determined when entering a new match, as this sets how the team should be structured, especially with pick ban systems at higher ranks. It should then be the role of the first tank and the first healer to pick 2 characters that either team up with each other, such as Rocket and Groot, or team up with one of the DPSs like Venom with Spider-Man or Cloak and Dagger with Moon Knight. For the last 2 characters, this then makes it easy as you just fill in the gaps. Ideally, if you are in a party of 6, your most versatile players that can fit into any role should be the last 2 to pick. If you are one of these players, you should be looking for team up abilities that aren't filled in that require either a Vanguard or a Strategist. Here's an example of one that I've seen frequently. My duo and I normally run Punisher and Rocket Raccoon respectively, so that's already 1 DPS and 1 healer off the board. Let's say that the first tank is Venom and the other DPS is Iron Fist. In a perfect world, this leaves some easy choices for the 2 fills to pick. You can pick Luna Snow for the team up with Iron Fist, Penny Parker or Spider-Man for the Venom team up, Winter Soldier to also benefit from the Rocket team up with Punisher, or Groot for the team up with Rocket. If they are confident in the Venom being the only tank and the healers being able to keep Venom alive, this takes Penny Parker and Groot off the board, allowing for a more offensively stacked team. If the team is extremely confident in their support players, then you go Groot and Luna Snow. This is the foundation that I feel that all players can already begin implementing in their team comp strategies when going for high ranks. This then begins to remove any disadvantage of the team comp and level the playing field to team and individual skill. The last thing I want to touch on is, again, the pick ban system that is seen in Marvel Rivals tournaments and the higher ranks. Even with your main characters getting banned, this strategy still applies, as it allows for flexibility if the other team knows exactly who in your teammates main. It is then on you to practice and learn more characters to be capable of being a valuable teammate even when you can't play as your top 1 or 2 characters. Let me know what thoughts you have about the meta and future metas in Marvel Rivals, as I'm curious to hear other opinions, especially from those that are much more experienced at the game than me. Until then, have a great rest of your day, wherever you may be.